In the previous segment, we saw that different societies in history adopted different kinds of social distinctions and imagined hierarchies, and that resulted from all kinds of chance events. Race became very important to modern Americans, but it was relatively insignificant to medieval Muslims. Caste was a matter of life and death in medieval India, whereas in modern Europe, caste is practically non-existent. One hierarchy, however, was of supreme importance in almost all known human societies. This is the hierarchy of gender. People everywhere, in India, the Middle East and America, in ancient times, the Middle Ages and the modern era, have divided themselves into men and women. And everywhere, this distinction was also involved with a hierarchy of men being given a superior position in society to women. In many societies throughout history, women were simply considered to be the property of men, most often the property of their fathers, their husbands, their brothers, or the male community in general. The most extreme but common manifestation of this is that in many legal systems throughout history, the rape of a woman was considered the violation of property, and the victim of rape was, according to the legal system, not the woman being raped, but the man who owned her and now owned defective property. Take, for example, what the Bible has to say about rape. So I brought here to quote to you from the Bible. The Bible says in Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 28 to 29, that if a man meets a virgin who is not betrothed to anybody, and seizes her and lies with her, and they are found, then the man who lay with her shall give to the father of the young woman 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife. This is how the Bible treats a case of rape. In this case, according to the laws of the Bible, of the Hebrew Bible, once the rapist compensated the owner of the damaged property, the father, for the damage being done, he, the rapist, was now given full possession of the raped woman, which now belonged to him. The ancient Hebrews considered this to be a very reasonable and just arrangement. It is telling that according to most legal systems in history, if a husband raped his own wife, this was not considered a crime at all. In fact, according to most legal systems in history, the idea that the notion that a husband could rape his wife was a logical contradiction, because to be a husband meant to have full control of your wife's sexuality. So to say that a husband raped his wife was illogical, just like saying that a man stole his own wallet. How could a man steal his own wallet? It's impossible. Similarly, a husband cannot rape his wife because she is his to do with her as he wants. Such thinking was not confined to some ancient Middle Eastern people. As of 2006, the last statistics that I saw at least, in 2006, there were still 53 countries around the world, about a quarter of the countries in the world, where a husband could not be persecuted in court for the rape of his wife. Even in Germany, the heart of Europe, rape laws were amended only in 1997 to create the legal category of marital rape, the rape of a wife by her own husband. Previously, in 1996, you could not prosecute a German husband for raping his wife because it was not a crime. It was outside the scope of the law. Now, is this sharp division between men and women also a product of the human imagination, like the caste system in India, or like the racial system in America? Or is the division between men and women a natural division with roots deep in the biological reality of our species. And if it is a natural division that is rooted in biology, if there are biological justifications for the division between men and women, are there also justifications from biology for the preference that most societies in history gave to men over women? Now, when we try to answer this question, it's quite obvious that at least some of the cultural, legal, and political differences between men and women really reflect biological differences between the sexes, and they are not just pure imagination. Childbearing, for example, has been considered women's job in all human societies in history for the simple reason that men don't have wombs, so they can't really, it's not just a fiction of our imagination, that childbearing is the job of women. However, around this kind of hard kernel of universal biological differences between men and women, every society that we know of in history managed to accumulate many cultural ideas and norms that have very little to do with biology. Societies associate a host of qualities and tasks and duties with masculinity and with femininity, and for the most part, most of these ideas and qualities, they lack a firm biological basis. For instance, if you went 2,500 years ago to democratic Athens in the 5th century BC, the cradle of democracy, you would find that in democratic Athens, women could not vote for any of the offices. They also could not be elected for any of the offices of the state. If you asked ancient Athenians about it, why don't you let women vote in your election or to be elected to be a judge or to be this official or that official? The ancient Athenians would have replied to you that this is natural to exclude women from politics because, says the ancient Athenians, women don't have the necessary intelligence and moral standards to do such things. So the ancient Greeks, or at least the ancient Athenians, thought that there was something about the nature, the biology of women that prevented them from fulfilling these tasks. Today, most people, at least in the developed world, think that this is nonsense. There is nothing in the biology of the female body or of the female brain that should prevent women from participating in elections, either as voters or as candidates. This is what most people today, at least in the developed world, think. So we see that what the Athenians thought was natural and have a basis in biology to prevent women from participating in the political game, to us it doesn't seem natural and it doesn't seem rooted in biology. There are also opposite examples. In many societies today around the world, including modern Greece, it is common to argue that men should not have sex with other men. If you ask modern Greeks about it, many of them would say that men should not do it because it is unnatural, because it is somehow against their nature. But in fact, there is nothing in the male body or in the male brain that prevents men from having and enjoying sex with one another. And there are many cultures in human history, most notably ancient Greece, in which homosexuality was not only pretty common, but it was also normative and legal. So we see that many societies, all societies have notions about what is natural and what is unnatural for men and women to do. Some of these notions have a real basis in biology, like the idea that childbearing is the job of women. It has a basis in biology. Women have wombs and men don't. But most of what we think about the qualities and tasks and characteristics of men and women are not really rooted in biology, even though we always say that whatever we say about men and women, there is some basis for it in biology. How can then we distinguish between what is really determined by biology from what people merely try to justify through biological stories and myth? They say that it is natural, but it's just a story that they invented. A good way to distinguish between the two, a good rule of thumb, is that biology enables, culture forbids. Biology is willing to tolerate a very, very wide spectrum of possibilities, of different behavior, of men and women and people in general. It's culture that obliges people to realize some of the possibilities that biology opens up, while forbidding other possibilities. So biology gives us many, many possibilities, and which possibilities to realize and which not, this is very often culture that forbids us to realize some of these options and forces us, whether we like it or not, to realize other options. For example, biology enables women to have children. It doesn't force women to have children. Yes, they have womb, but they don't have to use it. Some cultures, however, oblige women to realize this possibility, say that women who don't have children, they are not really women, or they are doing something which is unnatural. Similarly, biology enables men to enjoy sex with one another, but whether to do it or not, biology doesn't force or forbids anybody. It is only some cultures that forbid or try to forbid men from realizing this particular possibility. Now, whenever cultures forbid people to do something or force people to do something, they tend to argue that they forbid only what is unnatural. However, from a biological perspective, it's very important to realize that there is nothing which is unnatural. Whatever is possible is by definition also natural, according to biology. A truly unnatural behavior, a behavior that goes against the laws of nature, simply cannot exist. So it would be completely unnecessary to prohibit unnatural activities, because really unnatural activities, activities that go against the laws of nature, simply cannot exist. So why bother forbidding them? For example, no culture ever bothered to forbid men to photosynthesize, because people can't do it, so why bother forbid it? This is really unnatural. It's unnatural for men to photosynthesize from solar energy. Similarly, it's unnatural for women to run faster than the speed of light, because it goes against the laws of physics. Yet no culture, not even the Bible, never forbade women to run faster than the speed of light, because it's ridiculous. What's the purpose? Similarly, no culture ever forbade negatively charged electrons from being attracted to each other, because again, it's against the laws of nature, so why bother about it? The truth is that our concepts of natural and unnatural have nothing to do with biology. They are not taken from biology. They are taken from Christian theology and from monotheist theology in general, from the Bible. The theological meaning of natural, which is very different from the biological meaning of the word, the theological meaning of natural is something which is in accordance with the intentions of God who created nature. According to Christian theology, it was God who created the human body. And in creating the human body, God intended that the limbs and organs of the body serve a particular purpose. According to Christian theology, if we use our limbs and organs, our womb and our sexual organs and our mouth and so forth, if we use our organs for the purpose that God envisioned when he created them, then this is natural. If we use our organs, our body parts, in a different way than what God intended when He created them, then this is unnatural. This is theology. And this is just a story that people invented. As far as we know today, according to the science of biology, the human body was not created by an omnipotent God. The human body was shaped by evolutionary processes. And evolution has no purposes. When evolution creates an organ through natural selection, it has no intentions and purposes. Organs, all the organs in our body, none of them evolved to fulfill just one particular purpose. There is not a single organ or body part in the human body which is used for the same purposes and aims for which its prototype millions of and hundreds of millions of years ago in evolution was used. Take hands, for example, our hands and feet, and the hands and legs of actually all mammals. They initially evolved from the fins of fish. So if you think about the original purpose of the organs that came to be our hands and legs, they were the fins of fish. So we should accuse all humans and all mammals of being unnatural because they use their hands and legs in order to walk and climb instead of to swim in the ocean like their forefathers from which they evolved in the first place. Similarly, this line of reasoning also applies to our sexual organs and to our sexual behavior. Sex, it's true that sex first evolved for procreation, and that courtship rituals evolved initially as a way of examining the fitness of a potential mate. However, over millions of years of evolution, many animals came to use both sex and courtship rituals for a multitude of social purposes that have very little to do with having babies. Chimpanzees, our chimpanzee cousins, for example, they use sex in order to cement political alliances, in order to establish intimacy, and in order to diffuse tensions between individuals in the band. And there are much sexual activity in chimpanzee band that doesn't result in the birth of little chimpanzees. Is all that unnatural? Obviously not. This is one of the uses to which chimpanzees can put the sexual organs and their bodies, and what's true of chimpanzees is also true of humans. We see then that there is little sense in arguing that the natural function of women is to give birth, or that homosexuality is unnatural. Biology gave women the ability to have babies, to carry them in the wombs, and biology gave men the ability to have homosexual sex. Whether they use it or not, and for what purposes exactly, this is mainly up to culture to decide from within all the possibilities that biology gave us. Most of the laws, of the norms, the rights and obligations that define manhood and womanhood in different societies, they reflect therefore the human imagination and not biological reality. To make things clearer, scholars usually distinguish between two different terms, between sex, which is a biological category, and gender, which is a cultural category. Sex is the division between males and females, and the qualities of this division of males and females, they are objective. They are based on the biological reality, and they have remained fairly constant throughout history. To be a male in ancient Greece was exactly the same as being a male in modern Greece. All you need to do in order to be a male in ancient or modern Greece is to have XY chromosomes, and there you are, you're a male. On the biological level, there is little difference between males in ancient Greece and males today. So this is sex. Gender is something very, very different from sex. Gender is divided not between males and females, but between men and women. And if you want to be a man, for example, then just having XY chromosomes is not enough. In order to be a man, instead of just being a male, you also need to behave in a certain way that your society decides, to work in certain jobs and not others, to dress in a certain way and not in other ways. And how you need to behave and to talk and to dress in order to be considered as a man is determined by human culture, and this have changed throughout history. This is what scholars call masculinity. What you need to do, how you need to behave and talk and walk and dress in order to be a man, this is called by scholars masculinity. And this changes a lot from one culture to the other culture. Look, for example, at this picture. It is an official portrait of King Louis XIV, King of France. See how he looks. Note, for example, that he has a long wig, he wears stockings, he wears high-heel shoes, and he stands in some kind of dancer's posture. He also sports a very, very big sword. Now today, in Europe or in America, all these features, the wig and the stockings and the high heels, except for the sword, of course, all these features would be considered feminine, not masculine. But in the time of Louis XIV, around the year 1700, this was customary for upper-class men to dress like this, and Louis was considered a paragon of manhood and virility. All the men wanted to be like Louis XIV. So this was masculinity 300 years ago. Now look at these second pictures. This second picture shows you 21st century masculinity. It is an official portrait of President Barack Obama of the United States. Look carefully at this picture and try to see what are the differences. It's very easy compared to Louis XIV. When you look at Barack Obama, you ask, what happened to the wig? Why doesn't he wear stockings? Why doesn't he wear high heels? We often think, because we live today in the early 21st century, and we are used to seeing men like this. We are used to thinking that this is the masculine way of dressing. We think that it is natural for men to look like Barack Obama, to dress like this. But it isn't natural. In fact, the way that men look in modern Western society is very, very strange. Men never looked so gray and dull and dreary as they look in modern Western society. For most of history, in most cultures, men, particularly very powerful men like the big chiefs and kings, they have always been very colorful, very flamboyant in the ways that they dress and stand and look. Just think about, say, American Indian chiefs with all the feathers in their hair, or Hindu Maharajas, which are always dressed in silks and diamonds and furs and things like that. Also in the animal kingdom, usually throughout the animal kingdom, males tend to be much more colorful than females. Think about the situation among peacocks. The female peacock, the peahen, is very dull and gray. The peacock looks amazing. The same with lions. The male lion looks far more colorful and impressive than the female lioness. The fact that in the modern West, real men wear only very simple gray clothes and don't ever use makeup and things like that, it's just a cultural norm. It's not a biological imperative. This then is the essential difference between sex and gender. To get to be a member of the male sex, as I said, is the simplest thing in the world. All you need to do is to be born with an X chromosome and a Y chromosome, and there you are, you're a male. To get to be a female is equally simple. All you need is to be born with a pair of XX chromosomes, and that's it, you're female. But in contrast, gender is much more complicated. To get to be a man or a woman is a very difficult and demanding undertaking. Since most of the masculine and feminine qualities are cultural and not biological, no society automatically considers every male to be a real man and every female to be a real woman. Females spend enormous amounts of time and energy each day just to convince everybody around them that they are feminine enough, that they behave according and dress and look according to the present-day ideal of femininity. Similarly, males spend much of their lives engaged in all kinds of dramas and conflicts and competitions just in order to prove that they are real men. And success is not guaranteed. Both females and males may fail to win acclaim as real men and real women. Males in particular, they live in constant fear of losing their claim to manhood. Throughout all of human history, males have been willing to risk and even to sacrifice their lives just so that people would say about them, he is a real man. This is very, very important for them because at least since the agricultural revolution, to be a real man meant to have a lot of privileges which were withheld from less successful males and also from all the females and all the women. No matter how a society defined what it is to be a real man and what it is to be a woman, to be a man was always better. This is what scholars mean when they speak about patriarchal societies or patriarchy. A patriarchal society is a society that values what it sees as masculine qualities more than it values what it considers to be feminine qualities. Patriarchal societies, they don't educate everybody to behave in a masculine way. They educate males to be men, to think and act in a masculine way. But women are, of course, still, they are supposed to think and act and dress in a feminine way. And anyone who tries to change it will be punished. Anyone who tries to cross the boundaries between the genders will be punished. But after forcing males to behave like men and females to behave like women, patriarchal societies do not reward them equally. It rewards successful men with much more power and many more privileges than it rewards successful women. With very few exceptions, all known human societies in history, at least since the agricultural revolution, were patriarchal societies. Almost all known human societies gave men political, economic, and legal privileges and discriminated against women. How can we explain this? How can we account for it? Since patriarchy is so universal, we have only very few exceptions to it. It cannot be the product of some chance vicious circle like the caste division in India or like the racial division in America. It cannot be explained in the same way that we have explained those historical phenomena. It is particularly noteworthy that even before 1492, even before Columbus reached America and united the Old World and the New World into a single historical unit, even at that date, the societies in America were as patriarchal, most of them, as the societies in Europe and Asia. So we cannot claim that they had no contacts for thousands of years, yet they were both patriarchal. So it's not reasonable that patriarchy around the world resulted from some chance occurrence, like what happened with the Indian caste system. Because if there was some chance event in Afro-Asia that led to the formation of patriarchal societies in the old world, in Europe and Asia and Africa, how come the societies in America, the vast majority of them, they were also patriarchal? Because patriarchy is so universal, it is far more likely that even though the precise definition of what a man is and what a woman is varies between different cultures, there is some universal biological reason why almost all cultures valued manhood more than they valued womanhood, and valued masculine qualities more than feminine qualities. What exactly is this universal biological reason? We will examine this question in the next segment. Now, I would say in advance that we don't really know what this universal biological reason for the preference of manhood over womanhood. There are many theories, but none of these theories are convincing. The next segment will be dedicated to going over all these different theories and explain why none of them really answers this very important question.